Ever wondered how it all began? Why is there suffering? And how did God's plan for humanity start? Let's dive into the book of Genesis. In the beginning, 3 words that changed everything. From the spark of creation to the flood that reset humanity and the calling of a man named Abraham. Genesis is not just the beginning of the Bible, but the beginning of our story. Let's explore how it all started and what it means for us today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you won't miss the next chapters of this epic journey through the Bible. Genesis, the first book of the Bible and part of the Torah, or Law, is where everything begins. Written by Moses around 1400 BC, Genesis was meant to teach the people of Israel about their origins, identity, and God's covenant with their ancestors. Genesis, the first book of the Bible, sets the stage for everything that follows. It answers foundational questions such as, who is God? Why are we here? What went wrong in the world? It tells the story of creation, the entrance of sin, and God's unfolding plan of redemption through a chosen family. The book is divided into 2 major parts: Genesis 1 to 11, which deals with the early history of the world, and Genesis 12 to 50, which focuses on the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Through these stories, we see God's promises, human struggles, and a glimpse of hope for the future. And here are the main characters mentioned in this Part 1 episode: Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Lot, Hagar, and Isaac. Section 1. Genesis chapters 1 to 5. The story of creation and the fall of man. The creation. Genesis begins with God creating the universe out of nothing. In 6 days, He brings order, beauty, and life to the cosmos. God speaks, and light pierces the darkness. Stars ignite, oceans swirl, and land bursts with life. On the 6th day, God crowns His work by shaping Adam from dust and breathing life into him. Eve is crafted from Adam's side, a perfect partner. Together, they're entrusted to care for Eden, a paradise where God walks with them openly. Adam and Eve are all crafted with divine intention. Humanity is made in God's image and given stewardship over creation. On the 7th day, God rests, blessing it as holy. This story reveals a God who is powerful, purposeful, and relational. Man's fall into sin. God places Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, giving them freedom and one command: do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But everything shatters when the serpent, crafty and cruel, whispers doubt. Did God really say? Tempted by the serpent, Eve, and then Adam, choose rebellion, biting into the forbidden fruit, and by then sin enters the world. Instantly, their eyes are opened, shame grips them, and they hide from God. The consequences are severe. They are banished from Eden. Eden is lost. Work becomes toil, and pain enters childbirth. The curse of sin affects their relationship with God, creation, and each other. Yet, even in judgment, God promises a future Redeemer. A Savior will one day crush the serpent's head. Cain and Abel. The consequences of sin deepen with the next generation. Cain and Abel, sons of Adam and Eve, bring offerings to God. While God accepts Abel's offering, He rejects Cain's, which sparks jealousy and the first murder. God confronts Cain and punishes him, but still marks him with protection. This tragic story shows how sin escalates quickly, but also how God remains involved with humanity despite their failure. Meanwhile, Adam and Eve have another son, Seth, through whom God's promise will continue. The chapter ends with a genealogy, a thread of hope in a broken world. What are the key takeaways from the story? The lessons learned from the story of creation, the fall of man into sin, and the story of Cain and Abel. God is the creator of all things, and His creation was originally good and perfect. Humanity was made in God's image, but sin broke that relationship. Sin has consequences, but God's grace is still present, even in judgment. From what we learned, recognize your worth as someone made in God's image. Guard your heart from disobedience and jealousy, like Adam and Cain failed to do. Even when you fall, remember that God still offers mercy and a path to restoration. In what ways have I allowed disobedience or jealousy to affect my relationship with others and with God? Key verses from the book of Genesis chapter 1 to 5. Genesis 1 verse 27. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. Genesis 3 verse 6. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, she took some and ate it. Genesis 4 verse 7. If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. Section 2, Genesis chapter 6 to 11. The story of Noah, the flood, and the Tower of Babel. Humanity's evil and Noah's call. As the population of the earth grows, so does its wickedness. Violence, corruption, and evil intentions fill the human heart. God grieves and decides to cleanse the earth with a great flood. But Noah, a righteous man, finds favor in God's eyes. God instructs him to build an ark, not only for his family, but also to preserve pairs of every animal species. Noah obeys, preparing for the unimaginable while warning others. For 120 years, Noah preaches repentance while hammering together this vessel of salvation. Imagine the ridicule, but Noah trusts God's warning. The flood and God's promise. Rain falls for 40 days and 40 nights, covering the earth. Every living thing outside the ark perishes. For a year, Noah's family floats above the chaos, cared for by God. Finally, the ark rests on Mount Ararat. Noah sends a raven, then a dove, to find dry land. It returns with an olive leaf, signaling new beginnings. Noah builds an altar, and God makes a covenant never to destroy the earth with a flood again, placing a rainbow in the sky as a sign of his promise and mercy. The Tower of Babel. After the flood, humanity begins to grow again. But rather than spreading across the earth as God intended, the people settle in one place and build a massive tower to reach the heavens, seeking fame and independence from God. God intervenes by confusing their language, causing them to stop building and scatter, and the place becomes known as Babel. This story highlights the danger of pride and humanity's attempt to replace God with self-reliance. While it explains the world's diversity of cultures, it also sets the stage for God's later choice of Abraham to bless all nations. What are the key takeaways from the story? The key lesson learned from the story of Noah's call, the flood, and the Tower of Babel. God sees the thoughts and actions of all people, and he responds to evil with justice. Obedience, like Noah's, brings salvation and favor from God. Pride leads to division, but God's plan still moves forward despite human rebellion. Would you practice the following? Live a life of integrity like Noah, even when it goes against the flow of the world. Trust God's promises and look for his signs of faithfulness, like the rainbow. Be humble in your pursuits and align your goals with God's purpose. Am I building my life on prideful ambition or faithful obedience to God's direction? Key verses from the book of Genesis, chapter 6 to 11. Genesis 6, verse 9. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Genesis 9, verse 13. I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Genesis 11 verse 4. Come, let us build ourselves a city, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Section 3. Genesis chapters 12 to 25. The story of Abraham, the father of faith. The calling of Abraham. God chooses a man named Abram, later Abraham. God shocks him with a radical command. Leave your country and family. I'll show you a new land. In return, God promises to make him into a great nation, bless all the families of the earth through him, and give his descendants the land of Canaan. Abram obeys in faith. At 75, he journeyed to an unknown land with his wife, Sarai, and nephew Lot. God promises him descendants as countless as the stars, though Abram has no children. This covenant is the backbone of Genesis and the entire Bible. It marks the beginning of God's covenant relationship with a chosen people. Abraham's journey and the birth of Ishmael. Abraham's journey isn't perfect. It's filled with both faith and failure. Fearing famine, he lies to Pharaoh in Egypt, claiming Sarai is his sister instead of his wife. He and Lot part ways due to growing flocks, and Abraham generously allows Lot to choose first. God continues to reaffirm his promise, even when years pass without a child. In impatience, Sarai encourages Abraham to have a son with Hagar, her servant, resulting in Ishmael. Conflict erupts, yet God insists the promise will be fulfilled through Sarai. She will bear a son, Isaac. The covenant of circumcision and test of faith. God asked Abraham to walk in obedience, promising again that Sarai would bear a son, and his descendants became like countless stars. As a sign of the covenant, God commands circumcision for every male in Abraham's household. Abraham obeys, and the covenant is sealed. At 100, Abraham laughs. Despite their age, Sarai conceives, and Isaac is born, bringing joy and confirming God's faithfulness. Years passed by when God tests Abraham. Sacrifice Isaac. Heartbroken but obedient, Abraham ties Isaac to an altar. However, at the very last moment, God provides a ram instead. This echoes the gospel. God would one day sacrifice his son to save us. Abraham's faith is rewarded. His lineage will bless the world. What are the key takeaways from the story? The key lesson learned from the story of Abraham's call, his journey, and faith. Faith involves trusting God even when the path is unclear. God's promises are sure, even when fulfillment takes time. Genuine faith is shown through obedience and surrender, like Abraham's willingness to offer Isaac. Would you give a try the following? Step out in faith when God calls you, even if you don't know all the details. Don't lose hope when promises take time. God is never late. Let your faith be active by trusting and obeying, even when it's difficult. What area of my life is God asking me to surrender or trust Him more deeply? Key verses from the book of Genesis chapter 12 to 25. Genesis 12 verses 1 to 2. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country. I will make you into a great nation." Genesis 15 verse 6. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. Genesis 22 verse 12. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. And that wraps up Genesis episode 1. But we're just getting started. In the next episode, we'll explore Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, the ups and downs of the family, forgiveness, and God's sovereign plan through it all. Hit that subscribe button and join us again on this journey through the Bible, one book at a time, one story at a time. See you in the next episode, and be blessed.